Hey guys, and welcome to another great movie review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Alice Through the Looking Glass. I know previously I did Now You See Me 2. That was a great movie, as I said before in that video. And my next video will be The Conjuring 2, so get ready for that one. Now, before I start this video, I want to say that this movie was really, really good. It really ties everything together from the first movie. Alice in Wonderland. It continues the journey, and more importantly, it gives us one last look at the superior acting of Alan Rickman. For those of you who don't know, he did unfortunately pass away not too long ago, and this was one of his last performances, if I'm correct. But again, very superb performance on his part. Now then, that being said, let's get started. So, this video opens up with, this movie, opens up with Alice as the captain of her father's ship. And they are at sea and they're coming back home to London, and they run into pirates. Back then, pirates are real, yes. Even today, pirates are real. But yes, although they aren't the stereotypical parrot on the shoulder, wooden leg, are pirates. There were pirates back then. Anyway, they run into pirates, and she uses her brains to maneuver the ship in a certain way that everyone else is saying is impossible. And they get away from the pirates, and they land back in London. Now, upon arriving back in London, she finds out that her mother sold the shares of the company back to Hamish, who was back in this movie, who has taken over for his father, and she sold the shares back to him, and he's given her he's put her in a predicament by basically telling her, if you don't give us the ship, then we still own the house. So it's like, you want a ship or you want a house, So we see Alice get upset at this, and she goes to a room, locks her in. We find out the room is Hamish's study, and she locks herself in there after following the butterfly, played by Alan Rickman. Sorry if I can't remember the character's name. And goes through a mirror, and she follows him back into Wonderland. And she's really tiny again when she arrives there, and she bumps into Humpty Dumpty, who falls down, and a game of chess is playing by itself. And after Humpty falls, the king piece comes and says, "All my horses, all my men, go!" And we all know the Humpty Dumpty rhyme. And so they go about putting him back together again. Anyway, the butterfly tells her to go see the Mad Hatter because something is wrong. So she goes to see her friends, and her friends have been waiting for her for a long time, and they tell her that something's wrong with the Hatter. So she goes to visit him, and his hair is turning white, and he is basically dying. And as she talks to him, we find out that he feels that his parents are still alive. His family is still alive. Now, Alice doesn't quite believe him because, there's been no other evidence of his family being alive. So she doesn't quite believe him. The Mad Hatter gets upset and throws her out of the house. And so they send Alice to Time, played by Sacha Baron Cohen. And he they send her to time to go back and either save Hatter's family or find out what happened to Hatter's family. So she goes to Time's Dominion, and she talks to Time and tells him that she needs to what she needs to do, and Time won't let her because if she changes the past, it could affect the present in a horrible way. Anyway, so she starts to leave, and as she starts to leave, she hears a familiar voice, and we find out that the Red Queen is still there. And the Red Queen turned out to be kind of dating Time. And as they're distracted, Alice goes to where Time is keeping the time machine, and it's called they call it the Chronosphere. She gets it and she uses it to go back through time. And when she does that, we find out that the Chronosphere is the only thing keeping the master clock going. And the master clock is basically Wonderland itself, per se. And so she goes back in time, but she gets knocked off course by Time as he's trying to follow her. And she goes back a little bit further than anticipated, and she goes to the day that both the Red Queen and the White Queen were still princesses, and they were just crowned as princesses. And basically, she sees the altercation between the Hatter and his father, and it turns out that the Hatter kind of said some things, and his father said some things, and the Hatter left home. And so that began the Hatter's journey of solitude, basically. And so we see the Hatter trying to put, or the Hatter's dad trying to put on the crown on the Red Queen, but it won't fit because her head's too big. And the Hatter's laughing and being silly, and the crown breaks. And the Red Queen says she'll have her revenge on them, and the king says that's enough, and he tells everyone that he decrees that on his deathbed that the White Queen shall be named Queen, even though she's the youngest sister. And then we find out that something happened between the Red and White Queen, secret that nobody else knew besides them. And so Alice goes to try and talk to the Hatter to settle things with his family, but he doesn't want to. So Alice goes to talk to his father, to talk to the Hatter's father, but then finds out that, hey, something happened back then that I can change. And so she decides to go even further back. And at this point in time, after she's already left, Time himself comes to that period, and he lands where the Hatter and the rabbit and the mouse are having tea. And they're all having a conversation, making fun of Time, and then before Time leaves, he curses them to always be 1 minute till tea time. So they're until Alice arrives again. And so they are stuck there in that moment of time, 1 minute till tea time, forever, until Alice arrives again. And so that's when we kind of get the idea that they're stuck there until little girl Alice goes to Wonderland for the first time and runs into them, and then they're free of that curse. Now then, while that happens, Alice goes even further back to when the Red and White Queen were, everyone was still young kids. And the Hatter was a child, and so was the mouse and the dog, and everybody was young kids. And she's trying to prevent an accident from happening. And all the while, the little boy Hatter tells her, "Come, miss, you need a hat," and takes her to his family shop. and his father kind of doesn't scorn him, but unknowingly scorns him, if that makes any sense. Because he's like, did you want buttons or something feathery? And his father says, it's a hat, it's not supposed to be fun. And then he says, look, father, I made a hat. And he pulls out a little, little cute hat. Something that probably a doll would wear. And his father's like, oh, you got this on backwards. And he tries to fix it, and then he messes it up and then throws it in the trash. And the Mad Hatter gets upset and goes to his room. And so there we see that the father is trying to teach him to be a hatter, but he's trying to teach him to be serious, Anyway, as it goes on, the clock is falling towards the time that the accident's supposed to happen, so Alice goes to prevent it, and she unfortunately can't. She doesn't get to prevent it. It happens, and the accident is the Red and White Queen were eating scones, strudels, I honestly can't remember, but they were eating pastry, and the mother kind of said, go, no more pastries until afternoon. And so they go. Well, the White Queen, as a child, sneaks back into the kitchen, and she eats takes a pastry, and then leaves back to her room, eats a pastry, but as she's trying to eat the pastry fast, crumbs fall to the floor. And I'm just talking, little itty bitty crumbs. No, I'm talking big crumbs. And so she kind of kicks them under the bed, and then that's when the mother comes in with the Red Queen, and she says, what are these crumbs doing here under your bed? And she's like, I didn't have any, and she asked the White Queen, did you? And the White Queen said, no. And so we see the Red Queen get mad, and she runs off, and then she runs to this through the town, and she trips and falls and bumps her head, and that's when her head starts swelling and becoming big. And so that's the accident, and that's the secret that we find out, is that the White Queen basically lied about not eating a pastry and little kid stuff. Anyway, so Alice was unable to prevent it from happening, but she remembers something that time has said, which is you can't change the past, but you can certainly learn from it. And so we see Alice look through the Hatter's window, and we see him pull out the tiny hat and look at it and then put it back in his pocket. And that's when she realizes he kept it. He kept the hat after all these years. He didn't throw it away. So if he kept the hat, and Hatter found the hat years later after Horrendous Day, which is the day that the Jabberwocky from the first movie came and ruined everything. If he kept the hat, then of course Hatter would find it. Because if he hadn't kept the hat and threw it away, then Hatter wouldn't have found it at all. It would be in the trash, right? It would be long gone by now. Well, at this point in time, time is caught up to her, and time's not looking good. He's breaking down, and his minions are trying to stop the clock from going haywire. And so, but in order to escape him, Alice tells him, I need the chronosphere one last time. And he tells her no, and he tries to get her, but she goes back through a mirror into her world, where she wakes up in an insane asylum. And her mother tells her what happened, and then Alice proceeds to go ahead and escape, because she has to get back. So she does. She gets back to Haymitch's study, and she hid the chronosphere. She grabs it back, goes back through the looking glass, uses the chronosphere to go back through time to see what happened to the Hatter's parents, which is the Jabberwocky was destroying everything, but the Red Queen's army took them hostage instead. and so that tells Alice what she's known is that, hey, Hatter's parents are alive. So she goes back to tell Hatter, hey, your parents are alive. And at this point, the Hatter is just horrible looking. His hair is completely white. His eyes are sunken in. He's just not looking good at all. But when as Alice is talking to him, he comes back. He comes back. Life comes back to him, and then they go to find his parents, and they find out that his parents are there in an ant farm. They've been shrunken. They're little itty bitty, as big as ants. And so the Red Queen captures Alice, and then she gets the chronosphere, and she gets the White Queen and proceeds to use it to go back through time. And so we see time used kind of his last bit, or not his last bit, sorry. We see Alice follow them, and they go back through time as well. And here they go back to the same moment that Alice saw before, which is the two young girls, them as young kids. But time tells Alice, don't let her see herself. And so Alice goes to look, and you hear the conversation again, but then the Red Queen gets upset, and she bursts the room and points at the White Queen as the young child and says, liar, liar. Well, she saw her younger self saw her older self, and so everything froze. They became just frozen in time, and it looked like they were covered in like rust, stuff like that. Anyway, so Alice grabs the White Queen, and they proceed to get the chronosphere, and they have to go back to Time Domain to put the chronosphere back, because that is the only thing that will stop what's going on. And so they're going back, and they're running, and the whole while it's catching up to them, and it catches up to Mad Hatter, unfortunately, and Alice is running as fast as she can, but it's about to catch up to her, and one of the minions tells Time, sir, she needs more time. And Time says, I have not ticked my last talk, and so he stops the clock on his chest so that it freezes, the rust freezes for a little bit, and so she can keep running. But then he grows tired and then just drops it, and Alice almost makes it, but then right as she's about to put the chronosphere back, it catches up to her, and everything's frozen, and it seems like all is lost. It seems like Underland is no more. But it turns out Alice got it just close enough so that the electricity connects, and it brings the chronosphere down, and the chronosphere connects, making everything okay again. Because, movie logic. Anyway, and so movie ends kind of on a happy note. The White Queen apologizes to the Red Queen for lying after all those years, and Alice has a heart-to-heart with Time, and then she's talking to her friends, and unfortunately she has to go back. So she steps back through the looking glass, and where Haymitch is going to force her mother to sign the papers basically sign the boat over to him, and he'll give her back the house, and Alice tells her to sign the papers, but Haymitch says some kind of sexist things, And then her mom gets upset and tells him and rips up the deeds. And so then we see how privileged Haymitch really is, because he's after they start walking off, Haymitch says, "Mommy, mommy." It's just really funny. And so we see that at the very end, we see Alice and her mother make their own shipping company, start their own shipping company, and using Alice's father's ship. And her mother says, "We're going to run them out of business within a year." Basically saying, you know what? They said you weren't good enough for them. Alright. We'll be better. And that concludes the movie. Now, my thoughts on the movie. It was really great. I enjoyed it. The effects were great. The acting was great. Johnny Depp, phenomenal acting as always, as well as Helena Carter. Great acting. Just all around great acting. And of course, amazing voiceover by the late Alan Rickman. Again, great acting. This movie fit in really well. As at the beginning of this video, this movie fit in really, really well with the first movie. We saw Alice come back to Wonderland, after being away for so long. And we see her, when she first gets there, we see her happy that she's back in Wonderland. And, why wouldn't she be? Those are her friends. And we see, we see something that we've never seen before. Is the fact of good isn't always good, and bad isn't always bad. What I mean by that is, when the White Queen, as a child, lied about not having pastry, yeah, it was a little lie. But if you look at it, the White Queen is supposed to be this all good person, and again, as a child, she lied, and most children would do something like that, some children would do something like that. They would lie about not having good pastry. Did you take a cookie? No, I didn't take a cookie. That sort of thing. And so, but again, it really shows duality, if that makes any sense. It shows that, not everything good is good, and not everything bad is bad. And the Red Queen wasn't always bad. Yeah, she had a bit of a temper, even as a child, but in a sense, it's common for children to have tempers, for one. But even as that, even though she had a temper, she was upset for being blamed. And what child wouldn't be upset for being blamed? I mean, obviously, adults watching this, you were children. Children watching this, you hate being blamed too. For something you didn't do, especially for something you didn't do, right? And so what I'm saying is, it goes to show how how things can be construed or misconstrued, and how certain things can change a person's character. Because near the end, when the Red Queen and the White Queen are having a heart-to-heart near the end of the movie, she says, the White Queen says, "I'm sorry about lying about not eating pastry all those years ago. I should have just told the truth. And none of this would have happened." And the Red Queen says, "That's all I wanted to hear, really. It's literally all I've wanted to hear." So, in this situation, it shows that the Red Queen acted out of being blamed. The Red Queen acted out because she was blamed, and she acted out, because she felt wronged, and she was. I'm not gonna lie, she was, and it just really boggles me. Now, when you really think about of what the White Queen said, if I had just told the truth, none of this wouldn't have happened. And if you think about it, it's kind of true. If the White Queen had just told the truth as a child and said, "You know what, I did eat that pastry," the Red Queen wouldn't have run out and hit her head and caused her head to swell. She wouldn't have that big head. She wouldn't be angry all the time for having a big head and for being blamed. She wouldn't want to take people's heads off. You know, she wouldn't have started a war and done the Jabberwocky and stole the crown. Alice would have never came to Wonderland. All of these things, cause and effect, butterfly effect, if you will. And so it really, really makes you think about, man, if this person hadn't done this one thing, what could be different? It really makes you think. And that's what I love about movies is I believe movies should make you think on at least some level, such as and this is just a random movie I'm throwing out there. Feel free to watch it. It is a good movie, and who knows, I might do a review on it one of these days also. But it's a movie with Johnny Depp. It's called Transcendence, and long story short, it's about a guy working on transferring human consciousness, to a computer. Again, it's a very good film, but again, it makes you think that movie made me think on a certain level of, what if we actually did this? Would it actually be a person's consciousness in a computer, or would it just be memories of consciousness? If you follow me, would it actually be consciousness? Would it actually be a person's soul in a computer, or would it just be numbers and letters and code of a person? Again, it really makes you think, and that's what I love about some movies, is that they make you think on a certain level. And this movie kind of makes you think. It makes you think about sexism, because back then, this movie's set in the 1800s, and back then, women didn't have as many rights as men do now, and in America, and back then, women were looked at a certain way. Like, women had certain jobs, men had certain jobs. Alice was a captain, a ship captain, which again back then wasn't a woman's job, or looked at as a woman's job, I should say. And so again, it makes you think about sexism, and especially today, it makes you think about sexism, especially today. I'm not going to act like sexism doesn't exist. It does, and you shouldn't act like it doesn't exist either. But I'm getting off track here. Again, you get my point. I love movies that make you think. Again, it makes you think about sexism, makes you think about the repercussions of your choices. It makes you think about your loved ones, because in this movie we hear of Alice talking about her father, and of course we hear Alice talking to the Mad Hatter about his dad, and she tells him how he needs to make things right with his dad, or else he'll regret it. And so again, it makes you think about your loved ones. It makes you think about the words you said to them, the things you did, certain things you might have done, certain things you might not have done. All around, this movie is just great. This movie, it challenges you to think, but also it gives you something great to take home. It gives you a good message. It gives everybody, and not just women, but everybody, a good message of, if you put your mind to something, if you really want to do something, you can do it. If you want to be a sea captain, you can be a sea captain. If you want to dance Broadway, you can dance Broadway. If you want to be a ballet dancer, you can be a ballet dancer. This movie gives you something to think about. It gives you the idea that family while sometimes, clashing heads, family is family. Again, that being said, it's time for me to rate the movie. All that being said, it's time for me to rate the movie. I will say a solid 9 out of 10. You know what? 10 out of 10. I would give this movie a solid 10 out of 10. For the simple reason that it was directed really well, it was written really well, the acting was phenomenal, the plot was actually really, really good. I loved the plot. The plot was really good, actors were really good, writing was done, the effects were amazing. Loved the effects. We get to see the Jabberwocky again, and we get to see him in action more than we did in the first movie, and it's just amazing. It really, really is. It's just incredible. Again, the effects are great. All around, this movie is a great movie, and again, I give it a 10 out of 10, and I encourage anyone and everyone to go watch it. I encourage everyone to go see it. I encourage for themselves and to judge it for themselves. I will take a moment to go ahead and talk about that. Every movie that I do, I encourage everyone to go watch it for themselves, because you can go ahead and watch this video and you can just listen to me go on and on and on about what I think of the movie, and that's fine. But I like people to think for themselves, and I encourage people to go ahead and watch the movies on their own and to get their own feel for it, because you can feel something completely different that I feel about the movie. You can take a look at a certain scene of Alice Through the Looking Glass, and you can see it one way when I see it another way. That sort of thing. So again, I encourage anyone and everyone to go watch this movie, because it is really well made. It really is, and I love that it picked up from the first movie. And to be honest, I will be kind of disappointed if they didn't make a third one. Now, sometimes I can see little hints and stuff if they're gonna make another movie. Honestly, this one I couldn't tell. And if they do make another movie, obviously, the late Mr. Alan Rickman will not be reprising his role, unfortunately. Now, in this movie, he didn't get many roles or many lines, but again, phenomenal actor all around. I loved him in Love Actually. I obviously loved him in the Harry Potter movies. But again, I will be disappointed if they do not make a third one. I really hope they do make a third one. After all, these movies are basically based on the books. To be honest with you, I don't know how many books there are out there of the Alice series. I know there was Alice Through the Looking Glass and Alice in Wonderland. Now, again, this movie was great. I enjoyed it. I loved it. That being said, my time is kind of running out, so I'm going to go ahead and say for the final time a solid 10 out of 10 for Alice Through the Looking Glass. And as I said before, at the beginning of this video, my next video will be The Conjuring 2. So keep a lookout for that one. I will say right now, that movie actually scared the shit out of me. It really did. And if you're a horror fan, you'll definitely enjoy it. But until next time, this has been another great movie review. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.